How do you build a bulletproof and competitive mindset as an entrepreneur? It's a good question, right? This is why we interviewed Yuri Elkaim, owner, CEO of Healthpreneur. And Yuri actually used to be a competitive soccer player in Europe. So he knows how to sit there and build a competitive mindset and tie that in with a bulletproof mindset, which is why he's had so much success as an entrepreneur. So we did a deep dive on this, had various conversations about other things as an entrepreneur too. A lot of mindset stuff, right? That can carry over to a better life and being a better business owner as well too. So check out this conversation we had with Yuri Elkaim.
All right, Yuri Elkaim, what's going on, man? Welcome to the
I'm
show.
doing great. Thanks for having me, guys.
You're very welcome. And I know Chris, right before we hit record, Chris had to steal my thunder, man. He had just told, I want to give a quick backstory on how we connected. So, we were all in Talking More's black belt program. I'm sure you're probably still in it. Chris and I were in black belt. I know you were in boardroom, which is like a step ahead. So again, we saw like some of your videos and we were just really inspired and motivated. And ever since, man, we're like, you know what, we got to get Yuri on our podcast. So, much respect to all the success and just I'm excited to have you on, man, because I know you're going to drop a lot of wisdom.
Thank you. I'll do my best.
Gotcha, man. Well, cool. Let's kick this off, Yuri. So we always like to open up with like a billboard question, something about billboards. I still think billboards are an effective marketing and advertising strategy. So let's say like the governor of Toronto is like, you know what, Yuri, I love what you're doing. I want to grant you a ton of billboards all across Toronto. What would that billboard say and why?
Within the context of what exactly? Like any
Just
general message?
anything, any general mission, any general message.
Man, this you guys have stumped me with this one already. uh well, I'll go with this because this has been top of mind for me the last little bit. It would be more of like a self-reflection statement for people driving by, for instance. So it's something along the lines: if you're not willing to give up your past for your bigger future, you're also going to stay stuck in your present.
Hmm.
And I think the reason I say this is because a lot of people talk about wanting to achieve something bigger in life, but they're full of shit, if I'm being honest, right? Yep. They don't want it badly enough, which is okay, because I think part of the challenge there is the environment we live in. Most of us live in a pretty good, world. I mean, like roof over our heads, food on the table, it's not the end of the world. That's also very challenging for a lot of people to get out of, because that comfort zone or that level of mediocrity, I think, is the biggest pandemic in modern society. So for someone to say, I want to go from here to here, it's like, that's great on paper, but let's see what it actually looks like when you have to sacrifice something, like getting up a bit earlier, starting to work out, whatever it is. So I think that's really, for me, that's one of, because fundamentally, I really, really get driven and fulfilled by helping people become the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
And I get so frustrated when people just like shrivel away in fear. And it just drives me effing nuts.
Yeah.
So that would be the billboard.
Way to open up, man. I couldn't agree more, because there's a lot we align with and relate with that, because I get very frustrated too when I see that happen too. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Any of us, like you guys are in the fitness-based coaching, like I think we're all in the space to help people become better.
Exactly.
Right. So I think a lot of us share similar viewpoints perhaps on that.
Yeah. And it's exactly what you said too. I'll take this a little bit of a different direction, but it's like what you said. I think people are full of shit, and I think what you said too, I've never heard it like termed that way, to where that's the biggest pandemic of like this comfort that we're in, because you're right. At the end of the day, it's like most of us aren't going to sit there and starve. We're not going to sit there and freeze to death. We all have like, shelters and, enough water and food to eat and stuff like that. And that's that comfort zone too. So I guess the first question to open this up, Yuri, like, is there ever a time like in your life, when you were building, was there a time where you were just like, having to sacrifice so much, for that cost?
I still do every day. I have to put myself in situations where I force myself to do that, because I'm not any different from anyone else. Like my natural tendency is to be very lazy, is to lay on the couch and watch hours upon hours of soccer. That's like in a different universe version of Yuri, that's what I would be doing. And that's my default setting. So I've always had to train myself out of that. And for me, what's worked well is just putting myself in situations where I've almost overcommitted, because in doing so, it's almost as if I feel like I'm always starting, like that feeling of when you're just kind of getting things going and how to, like, you're scrappy. And, I don't know if scrappy is the right word, but I think what's dangerous that I've noticed among a lot of our peers, when you get to a certain level of success, it's very easy to coast. And I think for entrepreneurs, the worst emotion to experience is boredom. it drives me personally insane. And
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of vices, whether it's, porn or drinking or weed or the escapism comes in, because we're literally bored out of our minds. And I think entrepreneurs are naturally stimulated by challenge because it gives us a purpose and a goal to work towards. So I like to put myself in situations where I'm like, okay, well, that's a big commitment. Let's figure this out. Because all of a sudden, for me personally, I perform best under pressure. And that's all, like, even when I was playing soccer way back in the day, like that's when I typically perform best. So in terms of sacrifices, I mean, it's like there's so many sacrifices. I don't even consider them sacrifices, because for me, they're just like daily habits almost. Because I look at, okay, where do I want to be in the future? That's great. I'm not going to get there in the future minus one day. So I have to start building that person now. So what does that person look like? So as an example, by the time I'm 78 years old, I want to still, like, at that age, I'm 43 right now. I want to be able to do 100 push-ups in a row, 30 pull-ups in a row, deadlift 315, bench press 225, and run a 5K under 30 minutes. That's not going to happen the day before I'm 78.
Yeah.
So what are the things I have to do now so that I can probably shatter those goals by the time I'm 78, or at least get close, or at least hit them on par? And so I look at what are the daily things I have to quote unquote sacrifice, which is essentially walk every single day, sweat every day in some way, shape, or form, strengthen my body. And that's the kind of the way I look at sacrifice. It's almost like what is required to achieve the level of success that I want. And that's gonna be the same thing with business, right? So if I want to have a business that does $1 billion, well, I'm nowhere near the person I need to be to get there. So what is that person, like, who does that person have to be? Okay, like someone who's able to hold higher standards, have difficult conversations. There's all sorts of little things that I'm like, okay, this is not the $1 billion version of Yuri. This is like the old version of Yuri. Let's start to shed that skin and start to kind of morph into that new version, because we don't get our goals. We don't become the person we want to be after we get our goals, right? We hit the goals because of who we have to become in order to achieve them. So that's kind of the way I look at sacrifice. So it's going to be, I mean, there's so many things within that category. To nail it down to one thing would be, a disservice, I think.
Yeah, that's tough. But no, that's, man, very well said. And I couldn't agree more on that. And especially too, Yuri, like on just like, who do you need to become, right? That's often people think, okay, like here's the blueprint, like here's the action steps, but it's like, no, like you have to become this person in order to get to that destination. And it's a process. It takes time. So I want to shift gears here. You mentioned soccer. Chris and I grew up playing soccer. We never went pro or did like competitive like you did, man. So much respect on that. But what carryover did like playing soccer for all those years at such a competitive level, like what was the carryover to business?
So much so that when we bring on clients who have a background in like very high level sport, I'm like, you're going to crush this. It doesn't even matter what the tactics are, just because of who you are up here, right? So I think the big things for me were when I was 10, that's when I made the decision I want to play pro. And I was just obsessed with it. Like for the next 10 years, I sacrificed family vacations. I gave up jobs. I prioritized going to bed a little bit early in some cases so I could train the next day as opposed to going out. So now listen, like I'm saying this because I'm not like, there's many other people on this planet who've sacrificed way more than that. So I'm not saying like I'm a special snowflake here. But for me at the time, I knew that I wanted to become the best I could. So I started to say, this is a priority, this stuff, not so much. So I think the first thing I recognized was like what it really takes to achieve an objective in terms of sacrifice, in terms of commitment, in terms of time. I talk with my kids about this because they all play soccer. My oldest two are somewhat competitive. They're 12 and 10. But if I'm being very honest, I mean, like they practice 3 times a week with their team for 1 hour. I'm like, dude, that's nowhere near enough. Like you're watching YouTube more than you're playing soccer on your own. What does that tell you about what's a priority in your life?
Right.
And I'm not here to push them into anything they don't want to do, but I'm just saying, listen, if you want to play at a high level, if you want to become technically gifted, you're never going to get there by sitting on the couch watching YouTube. Yeah. So for me, and again, I don't expect them to do what I did, but I was obsessed. Like I played all the time by myself. And in the summertime, I'd be 4 or 5 hours at the park, and then I'd have practice at night. So that level of obsession, commitment, sacrifice, whatever you want to call it, still now in business translates. It's like, at least in my journey, it's been find something that I'm really passionate about, and then it consumes my whole, like it just consumes everything. Now, I'm not to say that like now I've obviously got 4 boys and you know, I don't sacrifice them for my business, but I'm still very committed to that work-life integration. So I'd say the first thing is really understanding like what it really takes to achieve a goal.
Right.
Second thing is leadership and teamwork. I happen to always be the captain of the teams I was playing on. And that doesn't happen by accident. I think that's just a tendency of like who I am in my core. I love leading and I love growing people. And I like rallying the troops around a common cause. And that's exactly what I do in my business. It's the same thing. And I think the third thing is, and this is taking me longer on the business side, is really, really not settling for lower standards. So on a soccer field, I was a goalkeeper. And I used to ream our defenders. If some guy was going up and wasn't making the work coming back to cover a run, he would hear from me big time. So I didn't take any shit. I told people like it was on the field, and obviously, you know, like I wasn't just like, you know, shouting at them. But I think in business, it's taken me a long time to get to that same level and finding that balance of, I'm not here to micromanage people, but I'm also here to hold people to a higher standard. And if you're not at the standard you need to be for us to get to the next level, you'll be replaced, right? Either you skill up or you get out. And that's something that's taken me more than a decade to basically, it comes down to like having hard conversations with people and not tolerating, well, maybe they'll grow into it. Maybe they'll skill up. It's like at some point you just have to know they just don't have what it takes. That's been very hard for me. And that's still something I'm working on. But I would say that's, from a kind of translation from sport to business, has been probably the third big thing.
Yeah. And I struggle with that too. What you just mentioned about like that whole skill, it's a process to like have hard conversations with our team and stuff. But Chris is better at that.
I still struggle with it too, though, you know, so different hats. It's not, man, because you really care, you know, and it's like, you want to see these people level up and skill up, like you said, but at the end of the day, sometimes you just have to face the facts that maybe they just don't have what it takes in them. And, you know, they don't want it as bad as you think, you know?
Sure.
Yeah. Sure. But those are great, like 3 kind of like carryovers into business here. I appreciate you sharing those. So you were a goalie. That's one of my questions I was going to ask you, what position you played. So what happened though? You started at 10, you had this obsession though, and then you went like competitive. Like when did it stop? Why did it stop?
So I have this term I call delusional optimism. Like, I don't know if this was built or in like embedded in me from a young age. Like, I literally thought I was the best goalkeeper in the world. Like, not just in my city or my province, but like in the world. I'd watch, you know, Gigi Buffon back when he was playing with Parma when I was a young kid in Italy, like when he was playing in Italy. And I'd be like, this guy's amazing, but I'm better. Like, obviously I'm like delusional, but that level of confidence, I would rather have that than like, I'm not good enough, they're going to score on me. Like, I used to taunt people. Like, they'd be coming around the box. I'd be like, dude, just shoot the ball. And then they'd score and they'd be like, just quiet, you know? So there was moments like that. So that confidence, I think, really fueled me through a lot of the challenges and a lot of the sacrifices, but also, I think it was also supported by a lot of other people being like, dude, like, you got something going on here. Like, you should really just keep at this. So when I was 19, just at the end of high school, I had the opportunity to go to France to go into the youth academy with one of the teams over there. And my agent was like, well, you know, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I think I actually want to stay in Toronto and go to school. At the time I was in a kind of longer relationship. I had scholarship opportunities to Maryland and, oh my God, one of the schools, Florida National University in Florida. And I decided to bypass those and stay in Toronto because my girlfriend's here, and go to the University of Toronto. So I ended up going there, did my degree in kinesiology, played varsity soccer, which was great. And I had an amazing experience. During that time, so I'm about, you know, after my first year, I get a call from one of the coaches I had worked with for a few years on the goalkeeping side. And he just calls me out of the blue. He's like, hey man, like, do you want to play? So this is the predecessor to Toronto FC, the pro team before Toronto FC.
Okay.
It's like, how would you feel about playing with them? I'm like, dude, that would be amazing. And I'm also terrified at the same time. He's like, well, they actually need another goalkeeper. And I was like, trembling. I'm like, okay, let's do it. And that phone call didn't just happen out of the blue. That phone call came from knowing this individual for 5-6 years and having trained with him, and obviously him seeing something in me to even tell the team, let me call this guy and make this proposition. So that's kind of how it started. So I was actually playing at the University of Toronto. I signed as an amateur on the pro team so I could still play with the university. So I played 2 years in Toronto, finished my degree at university, and then I went over to France after my degree to play with Lille. And I was mostly with the reserve team because it's very hard to go over at the age of 23 to a pro team in Europe and be like, crack the first team as a goalkeeper. So I knew the journey ahead was going to be a couple of years. And I basically spent a year over there. And I had a lot of time to think. I mean, it was like train for 2 hours, maybe 3 if I was doing some stuff on my own a day, have a game, maybe 2 a week. And then it was nothing else, like nothing. I'd hang out with some teammates, I'd walk around, I'd visit some places, but I had more time on my hands than I knew what to do with. I was actually going through the Canadian securities course to become like a stockbroker. I had so much time on my hands. I was just interested in investing. I'm like, let me just go through all this material. And anyways, so during that process, I was supposed to go from Lille to Amiens, which was a second division club, for a starting position the following season. And all of that just kind of fell through the cracks. And I was really pissed off because I had no control over my future. It was in the hands of my agents and the president of the various clubs. And I thought to myself, I'm like, this really, really sucks. I do not ever want to be in a position where I have no control over my life. And I think what it came down to was, talking about desire earlier, if I'm being very honest, at that point, I just don't think I wanted it badly enough. Because I think I recognized that I had other things I could do in this world or that I wanted to venture into. And at that point, I'm like, well, do I really want to keep doing this and being an employee, quote unquote, and not having my future in my own hands? And the answer was no. I was just really disillusioned by a lot of the politics over there. So I had an amazing time, but I also realized I don't think I wanted to dedicate the next 10 years of my life to that. And so I was 24, 25, moved back to Toronto, and I basically just stopped playing at that level. And then I just literally started training clients as a personal trainer. And then that's kind of how that journey started. So so I retired, quote unquote, just before I was 25.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. So I have two follow-up questions with that. I want to go back to maybe this isn't a term, but the delusional confidence, right, that you kind of talked about. And I think that's awesome because I've listened to your webinar, the PCP webinar, and I can see that confidence. I can hear that confidence that Healthpreneur is the best program out there. And I love that, right? Where did that come from though? Did it come from upbringing? Did it come from somebody that was a mentor?
I think if I were to put together a webinar on salsa dancing, I don't think you'd experience the same confidence. So I think confidence is situational. So I have a lot of confidence when it comes to helping people build a business online because I've done that since 2005. And being in business almost 20 years gives you a lot of advantages. And I say that because I've made a lot of mistakes. Every single business model people can possibly think of, I've done. Right? Some of it very well, some of it not so well. I've made mistakes. I've had 100 times more failures and mistakes than I've had wins, but I've had a couple big wins, right? And a lot of small ones along the way. And so when you see patterns over and over and over again, it gives you a certain level of pattern recognition. And I think pattern recognition gives you a certain degree of confidence to be like, oh, well, here's why, here's the issue, here's how we can fix it. Don't do this. We had someone who's interested in working with us the other day. She wants to do 8 different coaching programs. I'm like, are you fucking crazy? Sorry for the language. I'm like, you have no clue. That's amateur hour 101. And she's really thinking that this is a viable option. And I will tell people straight to their face, you will fail epically. And I know that because I've been in business for 20 years and I see what happens because I was that guy back in the day who did stuff like that. So for me, that's where the confidence comes from. Is it comes from, if we look at a table as the context or the situation, I have a lot of legs under the table to support, whatever my belief system is or my philosophy is around that. But I'm as confident as I am. I'm also very, very self-aware. And I know that there's a lot of stuff I don't know, right? Because if I did know it, I'd be at another level. So I'm very good with up until here, I can kind of, give you the roadmap. But here, I'm not quite there yet. So, give me some more time and we'll get there eventually. So I'm very aware that some people think well, I sense a little bit of arrogance, and I say, you're not wrong, right? I consider it confidence, but I would rather be arrogant than have no confidence if we had to choose one of those two labels. So I'm a straight shooter. I think a lot of my clients appreciate that. They're like, I just like the fact that you're no BS, you're a straight shooter, you tell it like it is. And that comes from having that experience. And I think the same thing with soccer is, I mean, I just had so many reps under my belt. Like I think in my whole life playing soccer, I may have lost 2 shootouts. I would go into a shootout. I remember like, it could be semifinal games of state championships. And I'm like, we got this, guys, right? And I would typically save at least 2 shots out of 5. And I think that level of confidence just comes from just a tremendous amount of repetition and volume.
Yeah.
So in my experience, that's really where it's come from, because the repetition leads to some degree of mastery around whatever the skill set or the topic is. And I think that just gives you, more, it allows you to reduce the blind spots as much as possible.
Yeah.
And that gives you a bit more confidence.
And I would say too, that's definitely like the vibe that I get too. Is just like, no bullshit, just straight shooter. And I really respect that and appreciate that too. So I know other people do as well too. But the second follow-up I had too, like with your story, and kind of just to conclude with the story part, is just at age 25, that was kind of the end of the soccer career. You started training clients. So that's where the beginning of your first business started, and eventually like Healthpreneur, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I was,
okay.
I actually, when I was in my first year of university, I decided I wanted to train clients because I'm like, this would be cool to get some practical experience for everything I'm learning in the class. So I took a full course load, played varsity soccer, and worked 15 to 20 hours a week training clients in my first year of university. And I kept that going while I was there. And then I obviously took a hiatus when I was playing soccer and came back later. But that's when I hung up my boots and started training clients like officially, that was like several years of grind, like 7 a.m, shoveling my car out of snow when I had a car eventually, driving across the city, like nonstop day until night. And then I was actually coaching with the University of Toronto soccer program for 7 years. So I would work with clients all day, underpaid. That was just, my mindset at the time, whatever.
Right.
And then I would literally, because the stadium wasn't too far, so I'd either walk over or run over to the stadium after, and I'd spend 3 hours at night, 5 days a week, plus games on the weekends with the team. And it was just like, at the time we didn't have kids, but I'm like, I don't know if I can keep this going for forever. And I really enjoyed that, like that moment in time. But I think the biggest thing for me was I really wanted to help a lot more people. And I realized I couldn't keep trading time for money. Like it was just not sustainable, not scalable. Had I lost my hair when I was 17 to an autoimmune condition. That's what kind of stimulated me into the journey of health.
Yeah.
But had I not lost it, I probably would have lost it, in that process of working forever. So yeah, that's where it all started.
I know what you're thinking. You're probably like, dude, come on. I was literally watching this video, watching this interview, and you literally just pop up on the screen and interrupt it. Trust me, there's a good reason for this. Just hold on, and I'm gonna let you get back to that interview or that video. Trust me, all right? So the reason why I stopped you on this is because we're giving away our book 100% free. Okay, so if you're a frustrated fitness professional, you're not growing fast enough, you're looking to future-proof and recession-proof your business by adding online training, or if you're doing online training, you want to scale and grow faster, all you have to do is check out our new book. We're giving the audio away, we're giving the PDF away. So all you have to do is click the link below in the description box and get your free copy. All right, so now back to the video.
Gotcha. I want to circle back on this confidence topic. I think it's really important. I think this will be good for the listeners too, because this is what I noticed too, Yuri, just like with coaching coaches, man, like I see the ones that are just that pick up the confidence so much quicker, how they excel, and they just like literally take off. So when you have a practitioner and your programs that just come to you and they just lack that confidence and you see it, how do you coach them up on that?
Well, I mean, we try to filter them out to begin with, to be honest, because when we're having a conversation with someone, and I think we talked about this in our webinar as well, it's like you have to have expertise, confidence, and drive. Like if you're not an expert, I can't do anything for you. I mean, I can give you everything you need to know to become more visible with your brand. But if you suck and you get on the phone with someone and you're charging $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 and you suck, no one's saying yes to working with you. And that looks bad on me because now you're going to say my process doesn't work, but in reality, it's you who doesn't work. And I think this is the thing that a lot of people have to recognize. When people come into our world and like, oh, I've done all these programs and I've been burned. I'm like, dude, maybe you're the one who fucking sucks. right?
Yeah.
It's like, if everything you did didn't work, what do you think is the common factor in all those situations? Maybe look in the mirror and take responsibility for that, because it's the same thing with like, oh, I worked with this trainer and I didn't get like you worked with a trainer and didn't get results. Are you crazy? If you just did push-ups every single day, you would get better at doing push-ups. How is this? How can you even say this, right? Or like, I did all these diet books and nothing works. Like, they all work, but they may not work for everyone in the same way, but it's a book you spend $20 on, whatever. So I think the first thing is we do our very, very best, only bring people on who we know we can help. And so that first thing is they have to be experts. Like, if someone just got certified last weekend, I'm like, cool, just watch my YouTube videos for the next 10 years and then work with some clients, then come back.
Yeah.
Because the expertise leads to the confidence.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like, I want to be able to bring someone in and say, listen, you're amazing, you're going to crush this. And then we give them leads, or they're able to, get more leads, and then they can enroll them because they have expertise and confidence. So, and then the drive is another big thing for us. Is like, if someone just has a very, very small vision of covering the bills, like I want nothing to do with that. Because when you have a small vision, you're not investing in yourself, you're not investing in your business. A lot of people with that level of vision don't even have credit cards for their business. I'm like, how do you not have a business credit card? What are you doing? Like, writing money orders? So, so that's the first thing, is like, we're trying to filter those people out, and it's no disrespect to them. It's just like, you're not at the point of your journey where we're going to make the most sense. There's other opportunities out there for you.
Yeah.
Once we have people in, now this, to your point around the confidence, is that there's different skill sets, let's say from a business acumen, that they have to build. So you can be an amazing chiropractor, an amazing trainer, an amazing naturopath, technically, but now there's a big skill gap on the business and marketing and sales side. And for me, in our business model, because it's essentially getting people on the phone and seeing if there's an opportunity to work together, the most important skill we help our clients build is their ability to sell. Because if you have, 30 phone calls that are booked, and you say that you're getting the wrong people on the phone, my first question is, that might be true, but how many of those 30 did you let slip through the cracks? Because if it was 5 or 10, we're not having this conversation. It's a very different conversation. So you have to take ownership of, let's listen to your calls. And we provide a lot of support on the selling skills, because we realize, yes, your messaging can be better on the front end. And that's another skill we help them with, is kind of the copywriting side of things. But if someone does a good job at being able to have a coaching, we call it coach to close, because it's not pushy sales, it's a coaching conversation. And if someone can either come in with that at a good level, that's great. If not, we help them build that. And it's amazing to see, like, everyday health professionals stand in their power and truly transform people's lives because they're able to get them to say yes, with the understanding that this person said, I want your help. And that's just a great feeling to have. And it's, for them, most important, because now they have this skill that they will never lose.
Right.
That's going to help them build confidence to further grow their business and further help more people. So that's from the confidence building perspective, it's really helping them build those vital skills on the marketing and sales side.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. It was expertise, it was confidence, and then it was drive, right?
Yeah, we call it ECD.
ECD. Yeah, that's
ECD.
really good. Well, cool, Yuri. I want to switch gears. We'll talk more about like mindset and lifestyle stuff. So right now, just like, I'm a big proponent of just like in the morning, kind of just priming our mindset to play offense, right? Not defense. So what are some like key habits or rituals or systems that you have in the morning that really gets you in the mindset to play offense, not defense?
I can't play defense. It's funny because I was a goalie, but I can't play defense if I tried. If we ever played poker together, not that I play poker, I'm the kind of guy who'll go all in and I'll bluff the whole thing. Like, I'm all in, or I'm like, that's just the way I operate. So I'm always playing to win, not to lose. And so for me, the first thing I do in the morning, and this has changed over the years, but right now, and for the last little while, it's been, first thing I do is focus on my vision. So I review my goals. I focus on where I want to be in the future. And I really connect to that, because it's very easy to say, okay, I want to be this type of father to my kids. Like, that's the big vision in the future. But if I don't connect to that and recognize what are the things I need to do starting today and every day to make that a reality, then I'm not like, what's the point of even writing it down? So first thing I do is spend about 10 to 15 minutes reconnecting to my vision, but also thinking kind of within that of certain aspects of the business that, are a little bit further down the road, like not necessarily tomorrow or next week. So it's very future focused, first thing. Second thing is I spend about 30 minutes in what I call like thought leadership, or whatever, wisdom thinking, or whatever it is. So it's a combination, and it changes based on the day, I guess. It's a combination of maybe I'm reading something and I'm looking at how do I synthesize this information into something usable for myself or my clients, or I'm either inspired by some situation or something I read or something I heard, and I'm looking at what are my thoughts on this, or I'm trying to always extract like what's in my head, how do I create a framework around this, how can I teach something that's going to give people a bit of an aha. So that whole thought leadership idea of like really like thinking about my thinking, because I think we don't need more thought repeaters, we need more thought leaders.
Yep.
And I think especially with AI, like I can't tell you how many people apply to work with us. The first thing we have them do after they send us a cover letter in video is a test project. And I can't tell you how many test projects have been sent back to us. And I'm like, that was 100% ChatGPT. Like wow. You can see the formatting. I'm like, at least change the formatting, right? Like remove the bold and colon, like it's so obvious. And I don't think there's enough thought that people like, they don't think.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to be commoditized by things like AI. And I think with the fact that it's like push button easy to crank out words, I think wisdom is going to be one of the most important things, in addition to connection and community and whatever. But true wisdom, that takes time and kind of focus to harness, and that's something I do my best to do a little bit of every single day. So those will typically be the first two things I do in the morning, and then I get right into my deep work. So I'm focusing on like what are the projects I need to move forward with that have nothing to do with interacting with the outside world. So ideally, internet's off. I have no access to anything. And it's just like me and creation. So that could be whatever it is. It could be improving our products in some way, shape, or form. It could be improving some aspect of our marketing. It might be reviewing some aspects of our business and looking for improvements. And that's typically, the first couple hours of my day. And then I'm at that point, like this morning, I did a really solid Peloton ride for 30 minutes after that, just to kind of reset. And because I get up at 4 a.m. So like most of my heavy lifting is done by 8.
Yeah.
So I could call it a day if I wanted to. So I'll usually have some type of exercise around that time, reset. And then the next part of the day is, usually after lunch is where a lot of my calls happen. But that's typically my morning is like, it's just me and me. It's like the inner world as opposed to the outer world. And then like the second part of my day is connecting to the outer world a bit more.
Yeah, that's great.
That's good, man. And I'm glad you did touch on the thinking part, Yuri, just because I think that's so huge, man, for all of us, and just my pastor once said, he's just like, the biggest challenge in your life is always going to be, changing your thinking. And there's a lot of just like truth to that. There is, because people's thought processes, the way they think, and then it's, leading to who they become and then their actions, it's a mess sometimes.
Yeah. And I'm not perfect. I mean, like I recognize in myself how easy it is to slip into autopilot.
Sure.
Of check phone first thing in the morning, just go down the rabbit hole of like that nonsense. And I'm like, man, if I can fall into that, a lot of other people can too. Yeah. And I mean, one of the first things we have our clients do is we'll just ask them like, take out your phone, go to screen time, and just show me how many hours on average you're on your phone a day. And these are busy practitioners and coaches who are like, I've got no time in my life. We're like, oh, wow, 4.5 hours on your iPhone. Do you think maybe we could take one of those hours and make it a bit more productive?
Right.
So it's like everyone thinks they're so busy, but the reality is they're not even aware of how they're just wasting their time.
Yeah.
And I'm very aware of how I've wasted my time in many cases and for many years. And that's why I'd say about 10 years ago, well, maybe it was 7, I really committed to becoming a morning person, because for the longest time, I would wake up early one day and the next day I'm like, it's not a big deal. And then I just got to the point where I just changed my self-identity. I'm like, I'm just the type of person who gets up early because that's what successful people do. And that may not be true in all cases, but that was a story that I bought into.
Yeah.
And I started to recognize how powerful waking up early in the morning was for me. I was like, man, I can have 3-4 hours of work done before my kids are awake. This is the best. And it's I actually look forward. I go to bed before my kids most of the time because I look forward. I'm like, I don't know about you guys if you're into coffee at all. I look forward to
too much.
It's weird. I go to bed at night. I'm like, I can't wait till I have my coffee in the morning. It's weird. And so I look forward to that, like that moments where I make my long espresso and get to my work. Like this, honestly, the simple things in life bring me a lot of joy like that.
It's
So
awesome.
yeah,
That's awesome. No, we're huge coffee junkies, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say
nice.
it's not weird at all, man. Because I go to sleep too, like kind of thinking about the morning routine of being able to sit on
Mhm.
that couch, have coffee, the peace, the clarity, being able to read like a business book or watch a training to like further my knowledge. So it's not weird at all.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, I think we're probably weirdos in some degree in the grander
Absolutely.
scheme of everyone, but I think people listening kind of get this. So
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, Yuri, I'm going to go a little deep on you with this question, man. So, if you had 5 years to live, what would you stop doing?
probably stop being so hard on my kids.
Okay.
That'd be one of them. To be in terms of stop doing, that would probably be the only one, to be honest. I feel like if everything was going to come to a crashing halt tomorrow, I'd be very, very pleased with how things have gone for me in my life. In terms of, I'll just add one to that, is like, what would I start doing? Is definitely make relationships a bigger priority in my life.
Mm.
So when I came online in 2005, the biggest mistake I made was I just kind of put myself in a silo and I said, I'm going to figure this out by myself.
Yeah.
And I didn't do that for 3 years. And then several years later, I finally got some coaching, joined a mastermind. And the next like 8 years, I started to really recognize the importance of people.
Hmm.
And I'm a very task-oriented individual to begin with. So my default setting is put on my headphones, do my work.
Yeah.
Like I'll choose task over people many times, but I also don't want to be that person because I've recognized how much happier I am. Not that I'm not happy, but just like connected and fulfilled when I have other people and relationships. And I think a lot of that just kind of went down the shit during COVID, to be honest. And then I got lazy, right? I was like, things are good. I'm happy at home. Like, I don't want to go out of my way. And I think if I'm being very honest with myself and you guys, like really recommitting to building community and connecting with people that I want to be surrounded by is super, super important. And if I didn't do that, I think that'd be a big regret in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that, man, because me and Chris have these conversations all the time and we're definitely on that same boat with that. And if you don't mind me asking, man, I'm really interested about like, what you said about like with your kids being hard on your kids. And I think this would be good just for the listeners. So do you feel like that they're going to hold resentment on you just by being too hard or what is it?
Well, so my parents divorced when I was 10. And
Got
so
it.
I don't really have the best example of like a family unit. So that's, you know, from a reference point perspective, obviously something that I've had to work on. I don't have the best relation. I mean, I historically haven't had the best relationship with my dad. The last couple of years it's been better, but it's also just like I don't mind spending time with him, but he also lives in Montreal. It's about 5 hours away from Toronto. We don't see each other that often. Do I look forward to speaking with him on a weekly basis? Probably not. I think that is more of like a mindset difference than anything. And I think he's gotten better over time. And I think I've become more accepting of who he is and just kind of like let go of some resentment. So I think part of it is I don't want to create that same relationship with my kids where like I tell my kids, I'm like, listen, like, I don't really care if you like me. I want to prepare you for a great life.
Yeah.
But I kind of do care if they like me because if I grow older, I'm like, I don't know if I'm a good dad. Ask me in 30 years. Like if my kids never want to speak with me, that's a failure in my mind.
Yeah. It's tough.
So I hope that, we've been able to create a really good life for them and we've had a lot of great experiences. They really haven't had to struggle that much. And that's something I'm very open with them about. And it's also the reason why I don't do anything for them. And I think this is where part of like the tough love comes from. It's the way I just, coach people as well. If like, I don't want my kids to be useless. I want them to be useful and resourceful and to be able to figure things out. And sometimes figuring things out means asking for help. That's fine. But if you're asking for help to tie your shoes and you know how to tie your shoes, I'm like, dude, no, right? So I don't especially I've never, ever, ever wanted to raise kids that were entitled or complacent because I cannot stand that shit. And I think there's so many kids out there, teenagers, adults who like, I call it ABS, adult baby syndrome, right? They take no responsibility for their life.
Yeah.
They blame everyone else. And I do not want to raise kids like that. And so I think that's where things can be I can be tough on my kids sometimes. So for instance, they have a routine, they have a schedule for dishwasher and dishes. Like Mondays is Oscar, Tuesdays Luca, whatever. And if I and I tell them, like, guys, like, I don't mind if you do your stuff. If you want to go watch YouTube for a little bit, that's fine. But after you've taken care of your core responsibilities, which is making your bed and doing the dishwasher, I'm not asking too much, I don't think. So when they don't do that, and it's like 8 years in a row, I start to like lose my cool a little bit. And that's obviously something I have to work on. I'm just like, accept, don't expect. But there's always this balance of like, you just have to do the basics, guys. Like, just take care of the fundamentals, because if you don't want me to be hard on you for this stuff, just take care of it. On the flip side, when it comes to school and sports, I'm not hard on them at all, on them at all. There's parents out there that are very hard on their kids when they come off a soccer field. And I'm not like that, because I've been, not that my parents were like that with me, but I've seen when I was growing up, seeing other kids with parents like that. I'm like, that is a nightmare to have that drive home. And the father's like, that was a terrible game and all this kind of stuff. So I like to help my kids be aware of how they played. So number one, I'm like, guys, like, the only thing I care about is that you do your best. Right? I don't expect you to be the most skilled person on the field or the whatever. That's up to you. And if you want to put in the time, but do your best. And so if they finish a game, I'm like, and if it's a good game, I'm like, dude, that's the best game I've ever seen you play. Like, you should be really proud of yourself. And then I'll always ask, like, what do you think you did well? What could you have done better? And I try to put it back on them, as opposed to saying, well, I think you should have done this. And so that, I think I do a really good job of not being too hard on them with. And also with school, it's the same thing. I think school is like glorified daycare, to be honest. So I could care less. It's a fucking joke. So,
I agree.
and they know this. I tell them this all the time. I'm like, guys, just the fact that you're out of the house for 6 hours is worth it. You'll learn so much more outside of school. It's all good. So if they come home with an F or a D, I'm like, I don't care if you come home with a D in Aboriginal studies or whatever it is that they're learning. But I do care if you fucked off, right? Like, if you didn't do your best and didn't try, that's where we'll have a conversation. But I'm not one of those parents like, you have to get straight A's so you can get into a good school so you can live a miserable life afterwards. I'm like, oh my God, what a joke that story is. Oh my God.
Oh man.
I love it.
Hey, Yuri, you're scaring the shit out of me, man. I'm only 3.5 weeks into being a father. You're scaring the shit out of me.
No, dude,
That's
honestly,
good.
parenthood there's a lot of parallels with business. There's a lot of parallels with leading a team and obviously having kids. The difference is you can't fire your kids. Right? I mean, you could, but I don't think that would end too well. So it's really a good reminder that it's like, for instance, I mean, I take ownership of the fact that I have a lot of stuff I need to work on. Right? I've got my own stuff. I've got, some patient stuff I have to work on. Maybe there's some anger issues from way in the past that I'm aware of that I have to just chill. Because the thing too, and this is the worst part, and I'm just giving you a forewarning here, is when you see your bad habits in your kids and you're like, man, fuck me. Right?
Got it.
That's the hardest part, to be honest, where you're like, you could have, you don't want to show up in this way. And now it's showing up in your kids. So like, man, and that's, I think, for every parent out there, you're always going to do some stuff wrong no matter what.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
And it's like, I think as long as you can do your best, that's all you can do. And obviously, like with anything, it's just kind of learning and growing and recognizing it's not going to be perfect, but it's not easy. It's hard.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I appreciate the wisdom. But yeah, Yuri, before I ask the last question, man, I just want to commend you and just say, this has been an absolute pleasure and honor just to be able to chat with you like this. And thank you so much for just being courageous, being bold, being yourself, no BS, and just opening up too, so that the listeners can kind of get to know Yuri a little bit more. So I really respect you, man. Just thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. I mean, it's been a great conversation. So thanks for having me.
You bet. So last question is, what does living a dynamic lifestyle mean to Yuri Elkaim?
It means being able to do what I want, wherever I want, with whom I want. It's basically having the freedom, the freedom to choose. And part of that, it's not just the financial side of things. It's, for me, the most important is the health. Because if you have all the money in the world and you can't walk up a flight of stairs, that's a pretty shitty life.
Yep.
So I love, when I'm working out, I had a really good sweat fest, and I can't do a heavy sweat fest type of workout every day, but when I'm in those moments, I'm like, this is what alive feels like, right? when I'm speaking on stage, like we have our event coming up in Scottsdale in a couple of weeks, like when I'm speaking on stage in front of hundreds of people and our clients, I'm like, this is what alive feels like. It's for me, it's how do I just continue to raise my vitality and feel those moments of like being in the zone? And then from a contribution perspective, how do I continue to contribute, even if it's on Zoom? Like I love doing Zoom coaching calls with my clients. I'm like, I really, really enjoy those moments in my week, and it brings a lot of satisfaction to me. So how can I continually contribute to help others become the best versions of themselves? And then part of that is how do I continue filling up my cup so I have more to give others? So it really is like this, from the health perspective, that's that, but also like this constantly, this nonstop growth so that I can continue to contribute. And that's for me, what I think a dynamic, at least for me, a dynamic life is all about. And it's great. I love every moment of it.
Yeah. Well said, man. Well, Yuri, is there anything that we could support you on? And then where can the listeners go and connect with you?
Honestly, just having me on the podcast is great. So thank you guys.
You're welcome.
I have nothing to promote, nothing to sell. It's just, I enjoy spreading the message because I know that hopefully somewhere, someone listening to this can be like, something he said resonated. So that's why I do this. And I appreciate the opportunity. In terms of where listeners can go, Instagram, I'm at Healthpreneur. If you want to follow me there, you can hit me up on a DM if you like. Other than that, I have a podcast on, well, where podcasts are, YouTube, Spotify, et cetera. It's called The Healthpreneur Show, which is essentially the audio version of a lot of the YouTube videos I put out. So if you are a podcaster, just check out The Healthpreneur Show, and I think you'll enjoy a lot of that stuff.
Cool. Right on. Well, we'll have those all linked up in the show notes. So once again, Yuri, thanks so much for your time. And guys, go check out Yuri and what he's doing.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Chris.
You bet. All right, guys, until the next time.
All right, I hope you got at least one nugget. If you didn't get one nugget out of this, hit the replay button, watch that interview again with Yuri Elkaim. Okay, the next thing I want you to do, two things. First one is download a copy of our free book right here. The second thing is watch this training right here. 6 new ways you can build a 6-figure health and fitness coaching business, all right?